Hello and welcome to the Augustine Institute Show with Dr. Tim Gray. I'm filling in for Tim tonight, and my name is Dr. Ben Akers. Today, this year, we celebrate the 40th anniversary of Pope St. John Paul II's apostolic exhortation on families, called in Latin, Familiaris Consortio. It was his exhortation and challenge and invitation to families to live the Christian life as a domestic church, that their family should mirror what the church is living. That's a challenge. He says and invites us, John Paul II does, to say that our family should be a place of encounter. Our home should be a place of peace and harmony between faith, family life, and work. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes it feels more like a competition between those things. We're also preparing to go back to school. And going back to school always gives us an opportunity for a fresh start, to begin again habits we might have lost during the summer. Well, my guest tonight is going to give us some pro tips, some practical guidelines of how to incorporate the faith into our families and live liturgically. Tonight I have a special guest. She's the author of Catholic All Year, the Prayer Companion, the Liturgical Year in Practice, Kendra Tierney. She is the mother of 10 children, the wife of 1 husband, and she blogs at a very popular blog and Instagram and YouTube channel called Catholic All Year. Welcome, Kendra.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're in a beautiful setting. Is that your house?
Yeah, this is our converted attic storage room, now home chapel.
I love it. Well, this is something that you write about. I think you could even call yourself an expert on, of how to live the faith at home as a domestic church. And I want to get into some practical questions, and we're going to have people that are write in and ask questions as well. But what made you start writing about this and blogging about this topic?
Yeah, I think that like a lot of us, my sort of reconversion and rededication of myself to the faith came as a response to, to being a parent, to having kids who were asking me questions and wanting to be able to answer those questions for them. And, realizing that I wanted my kids to have this deep and true understanding of our faith. And so, my husband and I started talking about it. We're thinking, we really want our kids to be able to do the tough stuff. We want to, abstain from meat on Fridays. We want to really give it a go on Lent. We want our kids to be able to sit through Mass and say the Rosary. And those things are all really good and important, and we still strive for those. But I realized that I was sort of presenting an incomplete picture of the faith to my kids. As I was researching it, I realized, we can't just observe Lent. Some people observe nothing at all, but for us, we stepped back in with Lent, but we weren't really observing Easter. And I realized that there's this balance that is given to us by the Church of these times of fasting and these difficult spiritual practices, and they've always been balanced out historically by the feasting and by periods of joy. And so as I looked more into these traditional church practices, I realized that, not only does it create balance in our family life, it really creates an opportunity to catechize our family and our friends and our neighborhood, in this gentle, daily kind of way, where it really does this calendar that the Church has given us, and these saints and feast days are little opportunities to learn about church doctrine and the lives of the saints in a fun way that sometimes includes food puns.
Well, and even today on the feast day of St. Lawrence, he's known as the patron saint of cooking, even though he himself was grilled alive. And as a quip of "turn me over, I'm done" on this side. So I love the Catholic faith, the humor, and you're right about the balance between the faith of the carrying the cross, but also the celebration, that our Catholic faith is not just Good Friday every day. It also involves Easter Sunday, that those seasons of fasting help us to celebrate even more. And I'm reminded of a story of St. Teresa of Avila, who one of her sisters found her eating in the kitchen in the middle of the night, and she was eating a pheasant. And she was just shocked. She was, Mother Teresa, St. Teresa of Avila, you are, the superior, and we're supposed to fast. And the famous line is, when I fast, I fast. When I pheasant, I pheasant. So it's good, like humor of, we need to, at the times of fasting, we need to fast and we need to make sacrifices. But at the time of celebration, the solemnities and holy days, those are meant to give up the things that we normally sacrifice from and to celebrate our faith.
Right. I think that we definitely can err on both sides. And, we maybe live in a society that has forgotten all about fasting. But I know that for me on my road back, I kind of erred too far on the other side at first. And, finding those ways to share the joy and the humor of our faith and these fun traditions that are mindfully included on the church calendar in order to give us those opportunities for community and for fun, and to really try to embrace those as part of our domestic church, as part of our parish life, and to make our Catholic faith something, that it's right there in the name of my blog and book, all year, but that would be so hard to walk away from for ourselves and for our kids. Because it's not just another way to go to church. It's woven through our whole life. It's things that we eat for dinner on a particular night of the year. And, I love how this type of observation of the faith just gets into all the different all the different parts of our lives. And, it's my hope that that combination of really having a better understanding of what these feast days teach and what they mean, and also how fun they are, would make it really hard for my kids to walk away from ever.
One of the Christian Smith, the Catholic sociologist at the University of Notre Dame, noted when he studied what keeps kids Catholic when they grow into adulthood. So is it sending them to a Catholic school? Is the example of the parents, and it came down to, among many things, just the one simple fact of the parents were willing to talk to their children about God and have spiritual conversations on days that just weren't Sunday, that weren't just meant for the church. That is, the faith is, as your title of your book it says, for all year. It's for every day of the week, all year, and the church has this wonderful liturgical calendar of the saints and seasons of the church that we celebrate.
Well, I'm very heartened to hear that, because that really is the center of this sort of method that we've adopted in our family and with our children. I like to call it the apostolate of the dinner table. And, sometimes it involves extended family members, and sometimes it involves, friends and neighbors. But really the heart of it is our family. And what I love is that these types of celebrations that I talk about in my first book, The Catholic All Year Compendium, and then the prayers that are included in this prayer companion are wonderful in and of themselves, but they are also great in our experience as a jumping off point for conversation. And that's, when we have a meal that's based on the country that a saint is from, or we have, we make s'mores on the feast of St. Thomas More because, it's close enough.
Saint War, yeah.
But really what that is a jumping off point for conversation. And it's a way to talk about, the lives of the saints and how they can inspire us and what that means for our daily lives and how we face challenges. And I mean, it's those conversations that are so meaningful. And I love how, because of this rhythm of the church, we come back to them again and again as the kids are at different ages and at different levels of understanding.
Well, Kendra, before I follow up with a question on that I have about the domestic church and the family meal, I'd like to invite our viewers at home to text in or make a comment on the forum channel below with a question that you have for Kendra. 720-650-0100. 720-650-0100 is our text line. You mentioned the family meal, and I just can't help but think of modeling yourself on the life of Christ and the way that he spent his time with his apostles. And in our Jewish, older in the faith, Jewish brothers and sisters, that so many beautiful conversations and so much is revealed over the table and the conversation at the meal.
Yeah, I really think that when people ask me, what's the one thing, what's the one thing we should do? And there are, obviously you got to go to mass and the sacraments. But I think that the most important thing that we have done for our family culture outside of the sacraments is making family dinner a priority. And it's so hard and everybody is so busy, and with 10 kids, it's so easy to give into that busyness, and everybody's got things going on. And people say toddlers are a challenge, but teenagers with multiple cars and, multiple activities, just being able to keep that family dinner as a big priority in our family. And my husband, who works long hours, he makes it a priority to be home for dinner. And that's really actually one of the sort of motivating factors for why I put together the Catholic All Year Prayer Companion. I didn't write any of these prayers. I found them. I fished them out of, dusty corners of the, and old prayer books. And I really put it together to help my husband in his role as sort of the leader of our domestic church, and wanting to share these prayers with our kids, but not having time to do a lot of research on what feast day it is and what prayers are associated with it. So, that's something that I love to do. And before I would just, print them out, find them and print them out and leave them where I could find them. But now it's a handy book that we just leave in our dining room, and he can crack it open, and my kids get to see their dad praying. It's not just something they see, during the homeschool day with mom.
That's beautiful. How would someone at home use both these resources, the prayer companion and also the compendium? So today we celebrate St. Lawrence, for example. How would someone take both these resources and implement it at a family meal?
Yeah, so the Catholic All Year the Catholic All Year Compendium, which is the first book I put out with Ignatius Press, it has just a little summary of the life of St. Lawrence, and because I know, my kids are going to ask me, and this way I can brush up on it and hit the interesting parts of his life. And it also gives just some little ideas for how somebody might want to celebrate the feast day at home with their family. Like, we're going to grill out, we're just going to, we're going to have some hot dogs. And then our sort of big family tradition is a family comedy night. So the kids get up and badly tell jokes, and especially knock jokes that don't make sense from toddlers are very memorable and fun. But because he's the patron saint of comedians and because he's grilled, so that's what we do. And then the prayer companion has the collect prayer for the day, which, especially if whether or not you were able to make it to mass today, it's a beautiful way to sort of seat our domestic church within the universal church and the liturgy, and sort of connect our prayer to masses all over the world. And there's another prayer for St. Lawrence in there also. For other days, though, there are scripture readings if it's a feast day that is associated with scripture verses. There are, novenas and litanies. Litanies are always great because everybody can, sort of shout a response. Right. But, so the two books can definitely function separately, but go well together.
Kendra, I have a question from Gina that comes in that I had used the phrase, and you used the phrase as well, about what is the domestic church? What do we mean by this phrase?
Yeah, I guess I don't know what the technical, you could probably answer that, but what I consider it is just a focus in the home on growing in faith. And So to not outsource the responsibility for our prayer life and for growing in understanding of church teaching can't just be the responsibility of our priests at Mass on Sunday or even at Mass all week, that we have a responsibility to build our domestic church, and especially we have the responsibility to teach our children in the faith and to continue to grow ourselves. And since we live in our homes, that's got to be the seat of our domestic church.
No, that's a great response. You get an A on that from the theologian. And I think that exactly like your book has so many wonderful tips on that, of our domestic church should look like the universal church, and so should follow the pattern of the liturgical year. It should have an element of the liturgy of the Word, which we celebrate at the Eucharist, at Mass. So we hear the Word of God proclaimed, and your prayers bring that out. The liturgy of the Eucharist, where the sacrifice of Christ made present for us at the Mass, we make that present in our own lives. So the parents, sacrifice for their children. The children see that sacrifice of their parents and also, show that charity towards one another. And so much is built around the meal, the Eucharistic meal, where we actually receive Jesus present, body, blood, soul, and divinity. But the very Catholic principle of when we meet, we eat. And so the gathering together, and so I love that family apostolate. That was the apostolate of the family dinner. That was actually, I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so we weren't as many as you're blessed with. But it was always a priority for my family to get together. So sometimes we're eating dinner at 4 o'clock because of the schedule. Sometimes we're eating dinner together at 8:30 at night together. But that was the time that we spent together as a family. Another question that just came in from Jane. Jane asks, I struggle daily to make time to pray because of my job and my kids. Can my work be considered a prayer?
I think it can be considered a prayer, and it must be, but and that's a beautiful way to offer the things that we do to God, and to I know for me it motivates me to do my tasks better if I am seeing them as a prayer. But I also think that we do need to set time apart, and even though we are so busy, to figure out a way to make that work with your schedule. And, to me, I know if I say a morning offering, even if I get to nothing else, that means that I have offered my day to God already. And so if that's all you get to all day, that's a really good first step. And then once that's part of your your personal routine, or, if you're doing it with kids, your family routine, then you can add more and more things in. You can set an alarm on your phone and say an Angelus at noon. You can, when you're stuck in the car, don't turn on the radio, say a rosary instead. And I know those types of things have been really motivational for me. And, we'll say it's childlike instead of childish, but I like to reward myself when I get to the things that I want to do on my plan of life. So, if I get to my family rosary, well, then that means I get to watch a show or something like that, that if I associate it with something that maybe I feel like I want to do more, then it helps it get done.
No, that's great. Positive reinforcement. It works. And C.S. Lewis has this quote about prayer when he writes to his nephew. He says, prayer can sometimes seem irksome. I'd rather do anything else. I'd rather fold laundry. I'd rather do the dishes than pray, because it feels like a chore. But we start to begin to realize that prayer is a relationship, and it's any good marriage and any good friendship survives. It's because of communication. And that's that's what prayer really is. It's a communication. It's two people in love talking to one another about what's on their minds and their hearts. Well, a question just came.
It's a conversation.
It is a conversation with God. Rhonda asks, how can anyone make time for all the different devotions between the chaplet, rosary, Marian consecrations, etc.? It can feel overwhelming, Kendra. What would you say to Rhonda?
I would say that that's exactly why I wrote this book. That it is, I know for me, it was really overwhelming. I didn't grow up, I grew up Catholic and with all my sacraments, but I didn't grow up with the habit of incorporating these different types of prayers. And as you kind of heard of the rosary, but then, learning there's all these other types of prayer, there's all these other devotions that different people say are the most important and the one that has affected them the most. And it can be overwhelming because there's no way that you could get to them every day. And so what I love about the liturgical framework of praying is it really does give us the opportunity to try these different devotions as they're associated with different feast days. And some of them, hopefully, we'll find are really meaningful for us. And maybe they won't be exactly the one that your friend said is her very, very favorite. And maybe it won't be the one that the priest says, everybody has to do. Maybe the one, you'll find one that's different that really speaks to you, and that one you can incorporate more often. But then others that maybe you didn't feel like you have time for every day, you can use the liturgical year. I know for me, the every month has a different emphasis on the church calendar. It's not just days, it's months as well. And so, for instance, the October is the month of the rosary. So anytime I've fallen out of the habit, October is such a great reminder to get back into it. And then praying for the Holy Souls in November. I know I should be praying for the Holy Souls every day, but November existing, and especially the 8-day indulgence for the Holy Souls at the beginning of November, if you don't get to it every day, there's this beautiful week where we can really focus on it. And so I think to cut yourself a little bit of slack, no one could get to all these devotions every day. But if you're like me and you need a little bit of a reminder, a little bit of a framework, that's what the liturgical calendar's for.
Yes, I mean, something is better than nothing. And try new things. My own family, I've been blessed with 5 little kids, and with different seasons of our life, even with those 5 little kids, some devotion has popped more than another has. And something we did the previous year, we forgot to do that next year. It's just, the Saints have this wonderful phrase that they say in Latin, nunc capi. Phil Rivers, the quarterback for San Diego, has a hat where he wears it on. I love it at the press conference. Nunc capi, now I begin. Every chance, every moment of every day is a chance to begin again and start over. Kendra, Brianna asks, and I think she's asking this question for many people that are viewing it, how have you handled times when your kids aren't enthusiastic about praying or going to Mass?
I would say that the best way to handle that is to get out in front of it. And that's not going to be an option for everybody. And I think that, there are always ways to incorporate it or incorporate prayer, even starting with older kids. But when your kids are really young, it just really becomes part of your family culture. And we have found that we don't get a lot of pushback on it because it's just something that's really expected. And in some ways, I think that if there is a lot of pushback, it's not necessarily a religion issue. That's probably more of just a parenting concern. And that, if it's something that's a priority for your family, you just tell your kids, hey, this is what we're doing. And in my house, my kids can face the same sorts of consequences that they would for other behaviors that we don't prefer, if they, are choosing to misbehave during prayer time. And we've just really found that if it's part of our family culture, and that especially when it's tied with fun and with fun activities, and it's not just always a drag. Sometimes it's snow cones on the Feast of Our Lady of Snows, so that we have those positive reinforcements, and also it's just something that we do a lot, so they have the expectation that we're going to do it.
I love that. Those so creative ideas. The book is chock full of them, so those who are watching at home and wondering whether or not you should get this book, you should get this book. It has so many creative ideas like that. Kendra, Tracy asks, what have you found to be the hardest part of raising your kids Catholic?
I don't know. The hardest part of raising a kid's Catholic, I don't know. I mean, I really I love it. I think it's the loveliest way to raise my kids. And what I really appreciate about the Catholic faith is the consistency of it. That I think it would be that it's hard to raise kids and give them a moral framework without the support of the church and without the example of the saints. So I have found that it doesn't make it more complicated to raise my kids. We were always gonna, fill our days with something, and to fill our days with saints' lives and conversations around the dinner table, and the sacraments, and family pilgrimages and family activities. I mean, it's just all, it creates family memories and shared experiences and a deeper understanding of our faith. So I'm not sure how I would do it any other way.
Well, Kendra, you have a range of children. I think is it 2 to 20 or 1 to 19 or something like that?
Yeah, 1 to 19.
1 to 19. If you and your husband look back at your first years of marriage, is there anything that you wish you would have known this first couple years for maybe somebody that's watching that's just starting off with their family?
Yeah, and it definitely is. When I look back, I look back at all the things that I worried too much about, and I definitely, to jump back to the previous question, I definitely worried, oh no, my son is misbehaving during the rosary. What does that mean? And now with my 10th, I know that it means that she just needs to take a nap. It doesn't have anything to do with anything more important than that. But I do think that having many kids gives you that perspective that that things tend to work themselves out, and that working on our relationship with God and our relationship with our children, being willing to make sacrifices for them and spend time with them, I think goes so far. And I guess the most important takeaway for me is that I think there's this sort of 1960s mindset, early the 20th century mindset of that father knows best and parents know best. And there was, I think, this concept of that you really have to know what you're doing. And I don't think that that's what our Catholic faith requires of us. That yes, we're in charge of our kids, but only because God happened to put us at the top of the family and them as the kids. And just like Joseph and Mary didn't have to know better than Jesus, they were just his parents. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to have all the answers. And so that we can just work on this process with our kids and alongside them, and all try to grow in knowledge and understanding and holiness, and to be able to say, I don't know the answer to your question, but I'll find out. To be able to say, I messed up, I'm sorry, and when my kids see me sin, they also see me go to confession. So we don't have to be perfect in order to pass our Catholic faith on to our kids. That's not possible for us. And so just, I think it gives them a more realistic expectation for their own lives and their own families too, if we can be more honest than black and white TV shows about families.
Kendra, that's a wonderful response, and that was the question I was going to close with. Was we live in a culture of death, and which means so many different things. And first and foremost, thank you to the witness of you and your husband for being open to such a big, beautiful family of 10 children. But that means that politics, economics, social forces are pushed against our children and our families today. And it's so difficult for ourselves as adults to live as Christian disciples in the culture today. And how much more difficult is it to raise children that are going to be Christian disciples when they reach adulthood? So thank you so much for this resource that you provided for us.
Well, thank you. And, like I said right at the beginning, it's my kids are such an inspiration to me to learn more and to be better. So I'm grateful. These books wouldn't exist without them and their inspiration. So it has been a lovely way for our family to live, and I'm so grateful to be able to share it with other people.
Kendra, if someone wants to find out more about your work, your apostolate, your ministry, where can they go?
Yeah, my blog is CatholicAllYear.com, and I'm also on social media. You're welcome to find me and reach out to me there. The books are published by Ignatius Press and are available on my blog and from there and wherever books are sold.
Thank you, Kendra. And I wanted to highlight that the book we were discussing that used as a basis of our conversation today was the Catholic All Year Prayer Companion, The Liturgical Year in Practice by Kendra Tierney. And as Kendra mentioned, it's available on her site, but it's also available on Catholic Market. So if you'd like to find this resource and others, we have a Catholic store that's run out of the Augustine Institute as well. So Kendra, thank you again for joining us, and thank you for joining us at home. Next week, our special guest will be Leah Darrow, and she's going to be discussing authentic beauty. Thank you for joining us, and God bless.